The Badger season ends in heartbreak with another first weekend exit from the NCAA tournament. But we celebrate the 37-point performance from the newest Badger legend, Mr. John Tonje. Plus, we dive deep into Luke Fickell's new look defensive line. I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, more sadness surrounds the Wisconsin basketball program after a loss in the second round of the NCAA tournament against sharp-shooting BYU. We get into our final thoughts on the game and discuss the season as a whole. How impactful and successful has the senior class been, and has Greg Gard earned the respect of Badger fans? One thing we can all agree on is the brilliance of John Tonje. What are we going to do without that superstar? The women's hockey team is currently about to go to overtime in the national championship game. We will react to that live as it happens today. Spring practice is in full swing, and we turn our attention to some key positions for the Badgers, mainly the defensive line. We'll talk about how different that group looks and how good they can be. We are at the Bucky Report on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button or the like button so you know when we make new content. Tough one, Justin. I was on the reaction show yesterday. BYU gets Wisconsin in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Just another non-Sweet 16 for this basketball team. How you feeling today? How are you reacting? It's a day later now. What are some of your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I wasn't as emotionally invested in this game as I think some of the other people were. Just watching it during the course of the game, not that I wasn't upset with how it played out. I feel like Wisconsin cost themselves this game. Like they defensively they were poor in this game. Taking that out of the picture, John Tonje was incredible in this game. I thought that Blackwell played really well, but I thought that there were a lot of opportunities. When you looked at this game, there were numerous moments within the game where Wisconsin had opportunities to make a big momentum-shifting play, and they just didn't make them. And they finally, caught up at the end of the game, but there were numerous situations in this game where they could have gotten so much tighter and made this a game that they could have, potentially had the lead in late, potentially could have put themselves, gotten it closer much quicker and put more pressure on BYU. And it just seemed like every time they had the opportunity to do that, they kind of just blew up or gave up a wide open three or allowed somebody to get in the paint and make a play. And it was just one of those situations where I looked at it and I'm like, you're not playing well enough to deserve to win this game. Like BYU is playing really well. They're executing, but you're not playing well enough defensively to deserve to win this. Now, like I said, Tonje was incredible. He deserved to win this game. Blackwell, I thought, played really well for spurts in this game too, but they left a lot of opportunities on the court on the defensive end, and that ultimately is what cost them this game.
Yeah. No doubt. Zach Bart says women's hockey right now is wild. Yes, again, we will react to that live. It is going to overtime. If you're just joining us, women's hockey in the national title game, scoring a penalty shot basically as time expired after a puck grab by the Ohio State player. It is going into overtime. Of course, they're in a period break now, so we're going to be a little bit of time, but we will react to that game live. Welcome Ryan Herrings to the show. He just joined us. Welcome, Ryan. A day later, Ryan, what are you thinking now? Where are some of your thoughts looking back on this game yesterday, now that you've had a little more time to soak it in?
Intense sadness, crushing blackness. Like the brightest light isn't going to shine through.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I'm so bummed by this game. I did another show today, just trying to react a little bit more under control, because the reaction show you do right after. And I mean, neither team played good enough defense to win. Like Justin's totally right. Wisconsin didn't. BYU didn't either. They gave up 89 and something in the second half.
We just didn't make them pay enough.
No, it's just very sad. I'm just ultimately very sad because I thought this team was incredibly likable. And you had a team that was incredibly likable that was also playing well. It's going to be a bit of an anomaly to find that. Tonje is a bit of an anomaly. You're not going to find many portal guys that fit in that well. You know, the 4 fifth-year guys on this team, that's a bit of an anomaly. And the one point I brought up on the show, and I'm curious what you guys think the show I did today, because I still think it's a successful year. But if you don't get past the round of 32 with this team, with a second-team All-American and a bunch of veteran players, when is Gard going to do it?
That's ultimately one of the big questions. We're going to get into that. It's good. It's a good, really good question. So first of all, I was obviously with you, Ryan, yesterday on the reaction show, and I couldn't commit that this was a successful season. It's hard to answer that question in the moment. Now having a night of sleep, let me tell you, this is a successful season, and I'm really proud of this team. I really am, and I was yesterday too. It's just that moment is difficult.
I can accept. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Realize that this team was a 5 seed last year, a 3 seed this year, had the most incredible offense that we've seen in basically 10 years since we were a Final Four team, and outscored opponents, put them down time and time again. Yes, we were poor defensively, but we were better than we were last year defensively. Last year was a complete train wreck on the defensive side of the ball, and I think there's a lot of good things we can take away. I am extremely sad as well at the end of the day. I hate that this team, that these seniors, that guys like Steven Crowell, that Ryan, you and I have certainly vehemently defended, guys like Carter Gilmore, who came out of nowhere this year and fought so hard, they couldn't get a chance to get to the Sweet 16. Like there is no Sweet 16 for them in their career, and that is difficult to take. Kamari McGee being such a light switch off the bench, and Max Klesmit, for as poor as he's played at the end of this year, he's had a good career with us. So there's a lot of things that I'm really sad about. At the end of the day, I guess I'm just still really upset that the committee did this to us. I get part of me is really mad about that still. The fact that we were in Denver playing BYU. We didn't have the rest that we deserved after playing on Sunday in the Big Ten tournament. I'm just upset about the whole thing, but I'm really sad that it had to end for those guys specifically. And seeing the other Big Ten teams be successful in this tournament, Illinois is playing right now against Kentucky. It's just sad that we're not going to be one of those teams, that Purdue goes back to the Sweet 16, Michigan State likely going back to the Sweet 16, Maryland likely going to the Sweet 16. And we're sort of stuck in this, we can't get out of the first weekend stuff. And it absolutely kills me.
I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Justin.
What I would say to that is you could make the honest argument that Wisconsin played the hardest team out of any of those teams. I don't think any of them had a particularly strong game that they've had to deal with so far, where you've looked at it and said that this is a game that they're likely to lose. That said, I think that looking at this game, there's some big picture questions I want to ask you guys after we kind of unpack the game itself. But there were some weaknesses to this team that I think going forward they have to find a way to fill. One of them being, I think you need more athleticism on the perimeter. It was a big sore spot in this game where they just couldn't shut off the drives. And that ultimately is what led to all the 3-pointers, is you just couldn't stop penetration. And part of that is because you have some guys who are really good basketball players, but aren't great defenders and don't necessarily have the athletic tools to be able to shut guys off. They were overextending a lot in this game because they kind of had to, because athletically they didn't have the type of tools to be able to react to give some rope there a little bit to some of the guys. And that was a problem.
It's a good point. Get back to your first kind of thought there. Like we had a tough opponent, yes, but we also allowed 91 points. You can't allow 91 points in an NCAA tournament game. You just can't do that. Like we're in a position where we just can't do that to ourselves, and it's just destructive. Let's talk about Greg Gard now. It's a fair thing. Brian brought it up. Justin, I'm curious as to where you are on this. Like you've been someone from the beginning that's been a little bit more, certainly lower on Greg Gard than Ryan and I have. He hasn't made it to the Sweet 16 again. Where are you at on him? Are you comfortable with him? Are you happy with him? Do you think, to Ryan's point, do you think he can make to the Sweet 16 ever?
I think it's a legitimate question at this point. I mean, here's the deal. You got somebody like Tonje that you're not going to do that on a year in, year out basis. And maybe you end up building a roster that is more some of its parts where you have guys that come in here and are really productive, but they kind of had that this year. So I don't really know what you do better, because teams are going to get better in the portal. That is going to be part of this issue here. Is now the longer this goes on, the better teams are going to be at scouting, and the harder it's going to be to find guys at value to add to your roster to be able to build this. This is why the transfer portal kind of frustrates me when people look at that like, well, this is how we're going to attack it going forward. Because it's like, it works when teams aren't prepared for it. Going forward, teams are going to get better at this. And you kind of aren't going to likely have the situation that you got with Tonje, where you kind of got him as a scratch and dent special because he didn't do anything last year. He was injured. So now you're going to get the opportunity where you're going to have to look at this going forward, and you're probably going to be like the guy that you're going to be looking at that's going to be a Tonje guy this year is probably somebody who played the whole season and averaged like 14, 15 points a game. You're going to have a more competitive situation than you did with Tonje. And that's going to be difficult because there's going to be money out there, especially now that teams are going to have it. And like we talked about, the schools that have that don't necessarily invest as much in their football team that are basketball schools, they're going to have money to play with. And there are quite a few of them that are good teams in the country that Wisconsin is going to be competing against, that could be a headache for them going forward, especially if they view the evaluations that Wisconsin's doing as something that they kind of take a deeper look at guys. So like a guy like Tonje, if they find out that we're targeting them, they might start taking a deeper look and getting involved before we're able to close the door on that.
So just so I'm clear, you're still in on Gard, yes?
I think that he's earned himself another, like a little bit of rope with this. I don't hate how this game played out from the standpoint of being like, I don't look at this some massive failure. I think BYU is a really good team. I think they could go out there and they could very well blow Alabama off the floor too in that game, because I think they have, like, they're skilled enough and they're a cohesive enough team to be able to cause problems for a team like that honestly is a worse defending team than we are. And BYU is much better at getting to the rim consistently than what Alabama is. Alabama settles for a lot of threes.
Ryan, where are you at on your own question? I didn't watch your show yet, but where are you at on that? I mean, it's a good question that you posed about not being able to make it to the second round with this team.
So I think there is an element of you just got to keep chopping wood. You just got to keep getting opportunities, and eventually you break through. Because here's the thing. Tonje hits that last shot, or he pulls up for three and we win. What's our conversation today? He can suddenly make it. So my point is, are 3 points the deciding factor of he absolutely can't do it, or he certainly can? Because that game came down to the wire with a guy that had 37 points and an opportunity to win it. And if Tonje just hits that shot, is suddenly magically Greg Gard like a magician pulling away the curtain? Voila, he can make it now. Like, no, come on. We're talking about a margin of 3 points determining whether or not a guy can absolutely make it or not make it. So I think you just got to keep building good teams, which Greg Gard did this year, and you just keep giving yourself a good opportunity to get in March. People call it an excuse, but Justin's dead on right. I said at the moment this bracket came out, BYU is a really bad matchup. That's a really good team. It is what it is. So no, I don't. I think he can get to the Sweet 16, and I think this year you get within a bucket of it. So I think it's no reaction to say he can't, but it's also fair to say he needs to.
One thing that I always go back to when I evaluate like my coaches and if I want them there or not, it's progress. It's all progress. And we've talked about it with Fickle many times and how we need to see progress on the field. He's made progress on the recruiting side, but not on the field. And to me, Greg Gard made progress. Like, he didn't adjust. We were constantly talking about how he didn't really make adjustments. He wasn't really inventive offensively. Well, he was this year. He made some adjustments defensively. He's making adjustments in the transfer portal era. He's making adjustments in the way he's recruiting more internationally now. So to me, there is progress, and that's what I need to see. Am I happy that he didn't get a Sweet 16? Obviously not. Do I feel like he should be able to get there? Yes, but I still feel like he can. And I still feel like he's a coach that when lightning strikes right and you got the right players in that big soup, you're going to be able to make a Final Four run. And sure, these players were here. Like, this team, absolutely. If they win last night, they could have made a Final Four. Who knows? But It wasn't quite there yet. But what I don't see is regression in this program. And I think that's to me the difference with why I am totally out on this whole Greg Gard out discussion. I'm very much Greg Gard in because there is not regression to me. It's progression. We're moving in the right direction. And if we were moving in the wrong direction, it'd be a different discussion. But here we are, 3 seed, back in the NCAA tournament, fighting. You're right, Ryan. 1 shot away. Like we all saw him shoot that, and we all were secretly hoping he would have taken it from the top of the key last night when he was about like 6 or 7 seconds left. I'm like, just shoot it right there, because the guy was super hot, and he made that. It would have been the crazy reaction show. We would have been absolutely going nuts today, and we've been looking forward to who we're playing next week, but we're just not there yet. And I think that we're making progress the right way, which I'm really happy about. Comment here from Tyler Strieber. Our defensive weakness was there all year, and it was covered up with our uniquely great year shooting the ball. The fact we never learned how to defend the pick and roll all year is coaches not adjusting. Ryan, where are you at on this? And like the fact that, how do you feel about Gard's defensive coaching this year?
Not great. By the way, if you see me look to the side, it's not because I'm bored by the great Rajiv or Justin. It's because I am keeping a side eye on women's hockey. So
yes,
just understand that if you're watching on YouTube, that's not me being distracted. Well, it is me being distracted. And so, yeah, like there's issues there, but there's also personnel issues. You don't have a great defensive lineup to deploy, and there's only so much you can do when your perimeter guards aren't very athletic and you don't have a rim protector. Guess what the 2 easiest ways to defend the pick and roll are? To have great perimeter defenders and then a springy rim protector. Like some people want an elite offense, and people are like, great job, Greg Gard, elite offense. Also have an elite defense. Well, that's tough to do, man. That's UConn last year. That's very few teams pull that off. This was a top 30 efficiency defense. It was really bad against BYU, and I thought BYU outcoached us on that end offensively. They did a middle pick and roll that we never adjusted to, where we were playing drop coverage. They were rolling early and pinning our big, and we never adjusted to it. But for the most part, it's hard to have an elite pick and roll defense when your guards are Blackwell, Tonje, Klesmit, and your biggest Steven Crowell. You're just not going to.
You need to get a athletic, like a Swiss Army knife defender type that you can put out there. Somebody who's 6'6", lanky, that moves well, and that they don't have to provide a whole lot of other things on the court, provided they can give energy and do some of the little things and really defend. So those guys are out there. Like, you can find those guys out there. It's just you need to look at them for what their value is, in that you're probably not getting a lot of offense out of them, and you need to look at them from what they are as a roster piece to fill out your toolbox. And that's one of the areas I think that I've struggled with what we've seen from Gard a little bit, is he doesn't always seem to understand what the shortcomings are and attack that. We talked about that with the front court a lot in the last several years, where you're like, he's gotten some really nice pieces, but he's not necessarily looking at what are the deficiencies of this team. It's more just, what can I add good players, which is fine. But to some extent you end up overfilling certain spots and not filling others. Like, a team would have looked great if you had a center that was just defensive minded, that you brought in somebody who could have given you 15 minutes and that's all he could do is rebound and defend. It would have been a really nice pickup for this team.
Wisconsin women's hockey
just won
the national championship. Congratulations to the Wisconsin women's hockey program. I looked down and I saw him, like, Coach Church, Mark Johnson was going crazy. Here we go.
Let's go.
Sorry to cut you off, Justin.
Hey, that's okay. We have something positive happen for the athletic programs.
Herb Herman's
after a heartbreaking day yesterday, we get a national title for the women.
Herb Herman says possible offsides. I did not see the play. I don't know if it's offsides. It doesn't look like the fact that they're all going nuts. I'm guessing it wasn't offsides, but we will see. Unbelievable. Congratulations to the Wisconsin women's hockey program, who just won a national championship against Ohio State now this was their 3rd consecutive trip to the national championship, and Ohio State's 4th. It was the 3rd consecutive Wisconsin versus Ohio State national title. Ohio State won last year. Wisconsin wins this year.
Who got the game winner?
I don't know who got the game winner, actually. I looked down and it was already, oh boy, Ohio State people are crying. Too bad. Sorry, Ohio State. I don't know who got the game winner.
Yeah, they got it last year. They can get over it.
If someone knows who got the game winner, put it in the comments here. This is great. I'm glad that we get to react to this live. This is super exciting.
My favorite moment is they pan to the crowd, and there's just one guy with a Minnesota Gopher sweater on that was so sad. He was there cheering against the Badgers. Like, fuck it, Minnesota.
He couldn't get face value back on his tickets, so he's like, screw you guys, I'm going.
I still know who got the goal. By the way, this team was so good this year. So good. One regular season loss, wire to wire, the best offense in the country. The three top.
They only lost to Ohio State, right? That was the only loss they had.
Ohio State was the only team that got them. Yep. This is their 8th national title. This year, they took the all-time lead against Minnesota in the win-loss, all-time record. This team is an absolute wagon. They're incredible. I am so stoked. Let's go.
Mark Johnson is effectively the Saban of college hockey, women's hockey.
Yep.
And listen, if you didn't get a chance to watch this game, like, go watch it. It was actually really exciting. I watched up until we started this show because I have a hard stop on the show today. I had to start it, but it was a really great fun watch. I mean, McNaughton in goal had a great couple early saves. It was really interesting. The first couple goals of this game, the first goal was Ohio State scored on a shorthanded goal during one of our power plays. We got it right back 12 seconds later on our power play. And then right off the beginning of the second period, Ohio State scores in the first 10 seconds, right off the face-off, the turnover in the neutral zone. It was a really back-and-forth game. I don't admittedly watch any women's college hockey except stuff like this. I do watch hockey, and I love the sport of hockey, and I feel like these players are incredible, by the way. I mean, Casey O'Brien won the National Player of the Year award, by the way. Just unbelievable performance by these guys. Layla Edwards, absolute just complete, like, incredible athlete. These guys are amazing. I mean, they're honestly amazing. Sims.
What about Sims with the tie?
I think, did Sims get the winning goal?
Sims got the equalizer. I don't know if she got the winning goal.
Sims got the equalizer. We still don't know who got the winning goal. Actually, I'm watching it right now. It was a rebound.
I can't see 27.
Incredible. Just incredible. I still don't know who got it, but wow. Like, just
she won't turn around.
Unbelievable.
I thought it said Sanders.
But yeah, it's 27. Whoever 27 is, guys. You can tell we don't always watch a ton of hockey, but like, absolutely insane. Everything I know about hockey comes from the Mighty Ducks and like the movie. It's literally what. When I went to work at ESPN, they gave me a sports test and I failed the hockey thing. I almost didn't get the job. I said, listen, I know this is the worldwide leader, but we do hockey here as well, which is that's my ignorance talking. Like, because this sport was amazing. This game was incredible.
It's super fun to watch, yeah. And kudos to 2 women's programs at this university that continue to just keep dominating and winning. We talk about basketball and football on this show primarily, pretty much entirely, and on the other show. And women's hockey and women's volleyball don't get enough love and respect from us, but wow, are they incredible. Just absolutely amazing. Fantastic. Congratulations to the Wisconsin Badgers women's hockey team, national champions. Absolutely love it. Let's get back quickly to talk a little more basketball.
I'm going to throw a comment up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
From Skylar Tao. Tonje is not an anomaly or special type of player. There's a reason his draft stock is what it is. He's a product of a system and his teammates. There will be more guys like Tonje. I disagree. Tonje his draft stock isn't high because he's not a plus athlete. What he is a very skilled basketball player on the offensive side of the court, which if that was normal, we would see it far more often. There aren't a ton of guys who with his skill set average 19 points a game. That is not the norm, that somebody is able to consistently get outside of their shortcomings and be productive. He will not play much at best. Maybe he'll be a guy who's a G League guy, probably will play overseas, but he absolutely is a plus college player. Like that is not somebody you're going to find just going into the portal. And if you do, you're going to see numerous other high-end teams that are going to take a guy like that because he doesn't have to be a high usage guy to be effective.
I think with Tonje in terms of just NBA, so first of all, I agree, like, you're not going to find a Tonje every year. I do think to Skylar's point, and I think maybe the point he was kind of making is you also have to give, because he never showed this at Colorado State. Right. So you do have to give Gard credit for unlocking.
Well, he was definitely aided by the system for sure.
Yeah, you got to give Gard credit for unlocking that version of Tonje, but that version of Tonje was always under the hood, and you're not going to find a lot of players with that engine under the hood. It's kind of like the American Pickers when they go to a random barn and they're like, this car could be incredible. We just got to polish it up a little bit. You're not always going to find that. So I think Tonje's special. Definitely give Gard credit for finding him and and, unlocking the best version of him, which he also did with AJ Storr, by the way. Gard is building a little bit of a track record here with wings and forwards. But yeah, it's just not realistic to find a second-team All-American every year in the portal.
37 points on 10 of 18 shooting, 3 of 9 from three-point line, and 14 of 16 from the free throw line. John Tonje single-handedly kept us in that game, and had he made a 3 at the end of that game and won it, he would have had 40 points, which would have been what an incredible game. Look at, he's amazing, and I mean, it's just John Tonje. I call the show The Legend of Tonje. I just feel like he's such a legend for this team. Like, we're gonna look back and we talk about Russell Wilson on the football side, that 1 year that he gave us. Look, talk about the 1 year that John Tonje just gave us. I mean, 3 seed without John Tonje, we're not a 3 seed. We're not finishing 4th in the conference. We're still talking about, can Blackwell be the next guy? Can Winter be the guy? But all we got out of Tonje was just consistent performances week in and week out. Absolutely incredible. I want to touch on each one of the seniors, guys. So I'm gonna kick it to each of you. I'm gonna name them off. You tell me one great thing about that player that impressed you so much, because we're losing a lot of guys off this team, and we're gonna talk next quickly about what we need. But Ryan, I'll start with you. Steven Crowl. I know how you feel about him. Give me your quick thought on the end of Steven Crowl's career.
Just really underrated. I think he will go down as one of the more underrated Badgers. He was a key to this offense, the way he could pass. And he wasn't a perfect center, but he was a very good college center. The one thing I'll remind people of, it's very hard to find a big man who plays every single game 30 minutes. A lot of guys, they break down, they have injuries, they foul out. He was always there. He was always available. That's not the easiest thing to replace, man.
Yeah, nobody's been harder on him on the podcast circuit, at least, than me.
That's true.
I absolutely thought he played well the entire last 3 quarters of the season. I was critical of him early in the season, and I think it was valid at that point, where he was a guy who disappeared earlier in the season. He played really well the second half. I thought his defense was better. I thought he rebounded a lot better than he had earlier in the season. And I thought that he chose his moments extremely well during the course of the season. People looked at his stat sheet from a point standpoint and were a little bit more critical on him than I think was fair, because there was a lot of opportunities there that I just looked at and I'm like, he's playing within the offense. He's not taking shots that he shouldn't be. And there are times where you probably say from 3, he should have taken a few more of those shots. But for the most part, you can't really argue it, because the results were really good this season. He was a much better 3-point shooter than he's been the last couple of years. And that was a big deal to this team.
He finished over 40% from 3 on the season, which is incredible. And you remember earlier in the season, he got called out by Greg Gard for not rebounding in I think it was the Illinois game, right? And ever since then, all he's been doing is doing what he's always done, which is score and fight
really
hard.
Did the dirty work late.
When you have a guy on your team that you can put the ball in the post against whatever big is on the other team and say, just go, just find a way to score. That says a lot. We don't have that on this team without Steven Crowl. We don't. Nolan Winter's not there yet. You can't just give him the ball with his back to the basket and know that he's going to have a really good shot at it. Steven Crowl's incredibly underrated. I completely agree. I think we will miss him. I know there's a lot of people even saying in the chat right now, that he was started hot, maybe disappeared. I know there's talk about the first half. At the end of the first half, that was a bonehead play, but a lot of guys make bonehead plays. But when you look at his career, he had a good one. Justin, Carter Gilmore.
I mean, that's a guy that we probably gave more credit than some of the other people did. I think that we were pretty fair with him throughout most of his career compared to a lot of the fan base. He played his butt off this year. We always thought that he played hard for these teams. He significantly improved this year and was a huge asset to this team. He was the glue guy for this entire season, and he went out on a high note, and he deserves it. The guy was validated this year for all the effort that he had put in throughout his time at Wisconsin, and absolutely deserves all the praise that he was given this season.
Ryan, Carter Gilmore, your thoughts?
He gets my Golden Sneakers award. If you remember, we did have a basketball draft, and the Golden Sneakers were the guys that I would give, that I just knew would bring the culture to my team, my roster. He is everything that we fell in love with college sports originally, right? The guy who comes, loves the university, works his butt off. You know him for 5 years, and by the time he leaves the program, he's the best he's been. It's the type of stories we're going to get less and less of in college sports, with the transfer portal, with NIL, with all these things, you're going to have less and less Carter Gilmores. And for all those reasons, he's one of my all-time favorite Badgers. This season in particular, I'm going to miss rooting for him.
I mean, the turnaround that Carter Gilmore had this season was unbelievable. I mean, let's be honest, he was a bit of a punchline last couple of years, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about I'm just as guilty of that as anybody. We talked about the fact that, he was a liability out there offensively, and all he did was just shut everyone up around him and said, okay, I got this. I'm going to drain threes. I'm going to get rebounds around the basket. I'm going to get blocks. Mr. October, great comment. Move over, Lego. Gilly, now the greatest blocks ever. Some highlight reel blocks from Carter Gilmore this year. It's an unbelievable story that Carter Gilmore had. And another comment I wanted to pop here, Don't Badger Me, says, could be the end of the 3 or 4 year team players. That is why this ending is so sad. New age of transfers. Yeah. I mean, Stephen Crowell, Carter Gilmore have been here their entire career. Stephen Crowell am I correct? He started every game of his career, right? I mean, other than maybe a couple, I think he started pretty much every game.
Probably not his very first year, right? Because probably his freshman year. I don't know.
His redshirt freshman year, he started playing. He was redshirt.
Basically 4 straight years of starting, which is incredible, by the way. So yeah, that's definitely there. All right, Ryan, Max Klesmit, what's your final sort of goodbye take on Klesmit?
Oh man, here's my one. When they asked him, what kind of NIL, I think this is an article Jesse Temple did, so I always want to give credit to where the people who do the work. I think they asked him what kind of NIL, Greg Gard, you would need to come to Wisconsin, what kind of package, and he said, putting on the Wisconsin uniforms, all I want. Not the season he wanted, but he's a real one. He really gives a crap about this program. He played hard. Again, not the season he wanted to go out with, but again, you're going to root for players who give a crap about representing Wisconsin and flying that motion W. So I think that quote right there is what I'll always take away from Max Klesmit.
I think looking at that game last night, what people will say is that we lost and that he didn't play particularly well. He had a couple of really big shots at the end of that game to get us back tight. And what I'll say is he absolutely was the fire of this team, because when he went out with injury, we saw how badly it affected this team. They lost a little bit of their leadership, and it was clear they needed somebody that had that fire. Klesmit was this team's fire, and it probably wasn't the senior year that he wanted, but you could say the last couple of years he absolutely played. He was one of their best players. So, and maybe not the best final season, but however you feel about how this year went, the guy was absolutely an asset to this team over the last several years.
Yeah, my thing is he's never going to be looked back upon as a guy that was like an amazing star for this team. Like, he's not going to be looked at like a John Tonje or a Blackwell at the end of his career, or some of the guys like Koenig that we talked about in the years past. But he was a real asset to the team. He brought defensive energy, brought a ton of hustle, brought some calm to the point position, by the way, this year, that we didn't have a point guard the entire year, but I thought he was the best point guard on this team. And when he played, we were better. So yeah, I mean, sad to see him go, and sad that his career ended the way that it did, like just really sort of tailing off to the point where we were like, he really isn't playing that well. And that's difficult for us. Justin, Kamari McGee.
He's another guy kind of like Gilmore, where you looked at it and you were just waiting for him to show some value. Now, last year he showed some spurts where he was really good. Really came together this year and turned himself into a real asset off the bench. I thought, previous years he really struggled with outside shooting. This year he was lights out for the bulk of the season. I think we found out that he's a guy who probably was best served being in spurts, where he could get out there for short periods of time and just kind of provide some fire. But he absolutely helped this team. He was one of their best subs, and you wish he could have ended on a better note. The bench kind of struggled in this game in terms of being able to provide a little bit of a boost from that side offensively. But I really thought that he had a good final year. He's another guy who's leaving on a high note, kind of like Gilmore, where you look at it and you're like, he turned himself into a real asset to the team by the time he left.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the movie Twins with DeVito and Schwarzenegger, him and Gilmore. They're like the same guy, although they look very differently. Gilmore is probably Schwarzenegger, and I guess I shouldn't say Kamari's DeVito. That's not really the right body type either. But The same type of character.
Interesting comparison, Ryan.
Yeah, they're the same type of thing to me, though. Both guys that you're just going to see less and less of, players that just work in the background, grind, and by the time they're at the end of their career, they've given what they could to the university, and you really become a fan of them personally. I got to talk to Kamari before the season, and one of the things that stood out to me is I talked about the new transfers, and he said, I took it upon myself to talk to Tonje and Amos and Hunter and tell them, this is a family. This is Wisconsin basketball. This is the culture. Welcome to this. And I'm paraphrasing here, but just another incredible culture guy that bought into this university and loved this university and represented Wisconsin really, really well. So besides, we've never seen somebody shoot corner pocket threes better than Kamari McGee, nor will we ever. So yeah, great year for him and a super easy guy to root for.
Yeah, I really like that. Well said.
I think John Bryant is coming back and jumping on to question that.
I don't know, man.
It was literally the only offense we had on that team.
Hey guys, I super apologize. I gotta bounce. We have groceries delivering to our house right now. I see them out my window. My dog is about to lose her mind.
Hop back on if you can to talk football.
Well, I'm so sorry. Thank you guys.
It's okay.
Yep.
It's okay. Yeah, look, for Kamari McGee, for me, is just like the corner pocket three, which Ryan said is hilarious. I mean, he was shooting 54%, by the way, at one point. 54% at one point during the season. And talk about a redemption arc for a player that no one expected to really be able to do that and make those have that kind of production is incredible. So absolutely amazing from Kamari McGee. Another guy we'll miss, spark plug off the bench, came in, handled the ball well. And also his ability to drive and score. He actually did that more this year than he has in many times before. He actually went to the hoop and found ways to score, which I thought was great. I mean, really incredible stuff from Kamari McGee. We already talked about John Tonje. Last question before we move on to football, Justin. What you kind of brought it up earlier with the perimeter defense. What does this team need? Biggest needs going into next season now, because at this point, we're losing every guy we talked about. Tonje, McGee, Crowell, Gilmore, Klesmit. All those guys gone. We hope to bring back Blackwell and Winter and other pieces like Janicki, but what does this team need now?
Yeah, I think it needs exactly what we kind of saw from BYU last night, which is a rim runner and a guy who can rebound and protect the rim. They need a Kita. They need a guy who can go out there and just be able to take out, to cause some type of disruption in the paint. I think they also need at least one really athletic perimeter defender with length to be able to go out there and help out with switches. This team really struggled athletically on the perimeter. They were really skilled offensively, but having somebody out there who could really move and it can be an athlete that makes somebody uncomfortable on the perimeter would be a big deal. And we just don't have it right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always going to be 5. Please get a 5. Tyler Strieber says Owen Freeman. Owen Freeman, the center from Iowa, has entered the transfer portal. He is being talked about and rumored to be looking at Wisconsin. It makes sense to me, given he is an Illinois guy, probably wants to stay close to home. What's the best program sort of in that area? It's ours. The argument against maybe is the Michigan schools are looking at him as well, Michigan specifically. And there's a team that look what Dusty May did with Danny Wolf and with Vlad Golden this year. They're in the Sweet 16. So I'm sure there's some pull there, but we're the school that's going to guarantee him the most playing time. We're the school that's going to guarantee him a starting spot for sure. As a starting 5, Owen Freeman would be an incredible get. Got to have a 5, got to have a wing, got to have a point guard. So those are my 3 where I'm you can't have Blackwell be the point anymore. You can't. And maybe it's Freitag, and that's great, but Freitag doesn't look, I don't know if he's ready. He certainly wasn't here this year. Cam Hunter's still on this team. Will he come back and now be the one?
I feel like we probably aren't seeing him again, to be quite honest. I think Cam Hunter's going to be out the door. Freitag could be. I think he's a guy you're going to see potentially in limbo between being the super sub guard and being a starting guy. You're going to have to get a point guard either way, whether it's going to be somebody who's going to be able to provide heavy minutes off the bench, or it's going to be somebody, because you're going to need some type of combo or somebody to bring in to help spell both the point and the shooting guard positions, because you really don't have that guy.
Yeah. Zach Bartz, completely agree. This team needs a point guard, a 5, and athletic scoring wing, 100%.
I guess Kinzinger
I
will
I
probably
think
be that
Cam
guy too.
I think Cam Hunter. I actually thought he was going to leave as well, and I think Ryan, and I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm pretty sure Ryan thinks he's going to stay. That's what his opinion is. Because now he has a chance, right? With McGee and Klesmit gone, the point guard position is wide open, whether it's Janicki, Freitag, or Hunter, or, of course, the transfer. I don't care if Cam Hunter is playing or not. You still go get a transfer portal point guard because we saw the need for it so much this year. And Blackwell can be so much better if he's playing his natural position of the two. He doesn't need to be the point guard. I don't want him bringing the ball up the court. I don't want him being the floor general. No, you need to get a floor general type, a guy that can come out there and get you 5 to 7 assists a game, have a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, and drop in 10 points a game too. That would be perfect. An athletic wing you must have, because look what we did with Tonje and Store the last couple of years. You got to replicate that. And kudos to Gard for getting those guys, but can he replicate it again? And please get a 5. If we do not get a 5 in this transfer portal, I'm going to lose it, because we need that rim protector. And by the way, a guy that can efficiently rebound, because as I said on the reaction show yesterday, Richie Saunders, that guy that we just hated to see yesterday, who was lights out for BYU, had 6 offensive rebounds. 6 offensive
and most
rebounds.
of them led to points from him.
That is a ridiculous statistic to have 6 offensive rebounds in a game as a wing. By the way, he's a small forward. He's not a 5 in there. He is a 3, and he got 6 offensive rebounds. You need to have better rebounding, and I think a 5 and an athletic wing can certainly stop that. But it just drives me crazy that we continue to have these problems every single year. Any other final notes on basketball that you want to bring up before we move on to football?
I mean, it'll be really interesting. One thing I will say with the Owen Freeman discussion and stuff like that, having this time now, being out of the tournament to work on him, that's a plus to Wisconsin here. Now that you know that he's in, you can really start putting the kind of the effort into locking him down, which I think is a big deal for Wisconsin to have that, as some of the other teams that they're competing with are more focused on the season still. And that hopefully will give us some edge there to be able to close the deal. For numerous guys. There's probably some guys that they'll be looking at that are still in the tournament potentially. Guys who are playing backup minutes, have somebody that's stuck in front of them that are going to show some potential in this tournament. But we'll see. It'll be really interesting to see what they come up with. They're going to have to find more front court depth and absolutely some athleticism for the backcourt, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to football a little bit. We obviously we love the basketball team. There's a bad exit yesterday, but we are going to talk some football. Spring football has had 4 practices now, if I'm not mistaken. Like 4 practices.
Yep.
Heard a lot of cool stuff about what's going on in the program. The offense seems to really be gelling, which is really, really nice. We're going to focus on the defensive line today and talk a little bit of running backs. So let's start here, Justin. Defensive line. What have you heard so far coming out of spring? What's piqued your interest the most about specifically this defense and the defensive line itself?
Honestly, it sounds like we're hearing that listen, I don't want to say that the defensive line is going to be good, but it sounds like it's night and day compared to what we were hearing last year in camp. I know that the defense was somewhat disruptive early in camp, but we weren't hearing things about the defensive line looking like they were capable of being somewhat disruptive. And I think we're hearing a lot more of that this time, and just able to stalemate. We're hearing a lot more about guys being able to move on the defensive line side. We're hearing a lot more bodies being used. And I think we just have depth here now in a place that we really struggled with last year, that we didn't have any. Like, we didn't have starters last year. And I think the goal here is to literally if you can become average to slightly above average on the defensive line, you're in a great spot. I believe in Whitlow as a defensive line coach. And I feel like you gave him a bunch of tools to start working with, to start building a cohesive defensive line room, which was something that he just didn't have last year. Even the guys that were in there that are still here, their bodies were not where they needed to be productive in the Big Ten. And that has been a huge transition, and us seeing like Barton being 320. And I've been super negative on Barton as part of the time here, because he kind of came out and lit into us who were critical of the defensive line going into last year, saying you guys are going to see. Well, we were proven right last year. Me being critical of him is I look at this, I want to see him do well, but I don't think that they were in a spot. Like looking at it last year, the only guy I'm pretty sure that we had that was over 300 pounds in the defensive line room was Howard, wasn't it? Jamal Howard. I don't know if we had another guy that was over 300.
Wasn't Brandon Lane over? No, Brandon Lane might not.
He was, but he didn't play. He was like 303 or something like that.
Yeah.
So we have no idea where his strength and conditioning was at coming in from a lower level. So he might not have been just physically ready to play from a strength standpoint. But Howard was the only guy that we had that was 300 that had been in a Big Ten strength and conditioning program for a period of time.
It's very clear that we wanted to get bigger. We got bigger, and it sounds like we're probably going to be playing with more down linemen this year, right? We're going to have probably 3 at least. So you look at guys like Corey Walker, Parker Peterson, the transfer, Charles Perkins, the transfer, and you couple that with what we already have on the team in Lane, in Barton. Who am I forgetting? JVR Suggs is another guy that they brought in.
Johnson.
Dylan Johnson. So there's a lot of talent in this room right now. Who do you think sort of jumps out as the potential star of this group? Because you look at guys that have high ceilings, maybe high floors as well. Last year, Elijah Hills kind of came out of nowhere and really did well. But who do you think is going to be that guy this year that says, all right, I'm going to kind of step up and own this? Because there's a lot of potentials, right? You have Suggs, Walker, Perkins, Peterson, a lot of guys that could really come out and take the show. We haven't really heard specifically who that guy is yet, at least in spring. But who do you see next year kind of taking the mantle?
I think Corey Walker is going to prove himself to be their elephant end. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to come in, that's going to be their strong side defensive end, and the guy that they want. They can kind of set the edge and provide probably a little bit more disruption than what you're expecting. He was really good at Western Michigan last year. I think that he will slide in and actually be good. He's a guy that came up about 20 pounds, 17 pounds heading into this year. So I think that he's going to have the body to hold up there. And I actually think that athletically, he's a pretty good athlete. I think he's a guy that they can bring up. I actually think one of the biggest things that we're looking at is this room now has 5 guys that are over 300. So last year we had one who was not even in the rotation. You have 5 that are probably in play, if not more, that are going to be part of the defensive line rotation. Dylan Johnson being 312, that's going to be that's exactly what you needed to see out of him, is see him get enough weight on his bones to be able to kind of anchor and hold the point, because he's a guy who has that burst and has that ability to be disruptive. You just needed him to be able to hold up when the run game was coming at him to not get washed out. And I think that his body's going to be in the type of spot now where he's going to be capable of doing that. And then we talked about Perkins. We've heard some good things about him. We've heard some good things about Suggs as a guy who can be disruptive in the interior. There are some pieces here that are really interesting where they can kind of mix and match what they want to do and have situational football in a far better position than it was last year.
Well, that's the beauty of it, though. We do have the players, and we do need to be like that. We're going to have to be more like horses for courses type thing and play the right guys at the right time. And it's got to be a good rotation of all of them. The one that excites me the most is Dylan Johnson. You mentioned it, over 300 pounds. And I think he moves really well. Like you saw the athleticism that he brought to the line last year when Dylan Johnson was in there. Now, he was a freshman last year. He was a true freshman. So he really never he needed that body development and that time with Brady Collins. And now that he has that, you couple that with bringing in beef around him, and competition in the room is going to make everybody around him better. Last year, there wasn't competition in the room. We were playing 2 down linemen run against Iowa's run game. Like, I don't know what the hell we were doing last year. But now you got actual size up there. And if you actually play a defensive end like Corey Walker, who, by the way, you mentioned at Western Michigan, he had 5.5 sacks last year at Western Michigan. Like, that's not nothing, right? I mean, I know that's not the Big Ten, but you do that in the MAC. And then you get better and you get bigger and you play with the other guys around you. In order to start on this defensive line, you got to work hard, because you've got a lot of guys. We haven't even talked about Michael Garner yet. I mean, there's people in there and you got you got freshmen potentially, so they can really step up and do things. There's so many opportunities for someone to shine. And we desperately need that, because we can't have another year where we're giving up just 6 yards a carry to other fellow Big Ten teams. We're letting people shred us through the middle, and then that opens up everything else around them. And we can't have that. Our defense cannot be as porous as it was last year. And surely with the size increases on the line, it won't happen again. I can't see it happening again. I'm not saying we're going to be stellar. We don't have to be stellar. We've got a pretty good secondary. We got some pretty good linebackers. We need to just be not porous at the defensive line. We've got to get some disruption, and we've got to fill the holes. And as I've said every year, let the linebackers do their thing. You got Christian Allegro and Tackett Curtis starting at middle linebacker, which they should be really, really good up there. You've got a lot of guys competing for outside linebacker. You got to let them do their thing, and you just need those big 300-pound guys to eat up offensive linemen, and not get swallowed up.
Yeah, I think the way I look at this is there's people have no patience with the defensive line, and I think what they don't understand is you don't. It's kind of like offensive line. You don't build a line room in 1 year. Like it's like a 3-year process normally to get your defensive line where you want it to be. And that's kind of how I look at it. When we started recruiting with this staff, my perspective on it was it's going to take us 3 years to get guys who are going to be like legit studs in that room. That's going to be Dylan Johnson as a redshirt sophomore, or I'm sure he played more than enough games. So he'll be a true junior by that point. That's what you're looking at. Like, you're trying to kind of fill this in. And I think they did a pretty good job of filling this in. If you're lucky and Johnson is a year ahead, then he's a really good player this year. Or at least shows some ability to be a guy who, like, you see the flashes that he's going to be a good player next year. But I think people don't want to have the patience on this and realize you have to build these bodies. Like, these guys aren't playing in high school at 260 and, not remotely the level of strength that they need to be able to hold up to a 320-pound offensive lineman. And now you're getting to the point where the bodies are – so year 2, I always look at it, you want to have the strength be where it needs to be. And by year 3, it all kind of comes together from a strength and technique standpoint where it's all clicking now that they've adjusted their body being at the new weight. So I really think that looking at this, we're going to see some improvement this year. I don't think we're going to look at this defensive line and be like, they're amazing, but I do think we're going to look at it and be like, they're good enough. Like, I think they're good enough to be solid in a game against Minnesota and Iowa. What they're not going to do is, if you're expecting them to go against a team like Ohio State and you need 3 or 4 sacks, we're not getting it from this group. It's not going to happen. So it's really going to be, you're going to have to kind of, keep reasonable expectations and just hope that they can shut the run game down to the point where we're not getting gashed against the teams we play this year, and that they're capable of at least allowing the linebackers to flow and make plays. Yeah.
It has to be that way, because we saw way too many times that the D-line just wasn't holding up their end of the bargain last year. Yeah. The other position we wanted to touch on before we end the show today is running back a little bit. There's 3 obvious guys for like who's going to start. It's Dylan Jones, Darren Dupree, and of course it's Cade Yakameli, who 8.2 yards a carry last year. He is back. He did not transfer. Shockingly, I'm surprised he came back. He better get some carries this year. And we were talking a little bit before the show, Justin, about we haven't heard too much come out other than the fact that the offense is going to look, Grimes is going to run the ball a lot. And that's one thing we know based on what we've seen in spring practice so far is there is a lot of running plays. There's a lot of excitement about the offense in general. Certainly what Billy Edwards is doing, what the receivers are doing, but the running game and that offensive line. First of all, I did want to note this. We talked a lot about the depth chart. It looks like you were right. Emerson Mandel looks to be going to be playing right guard, at least tentatively right now. He looks to be the guy at right guard.
Sounds like it's an open competition, but he's definitely in the mix for that spot.
Right. And whether it's JP Benchawal, or whether it's Emerson Mandel, but I think Mandel is probably going to get it. I think, and you called that very early on. You definitely thought he was going to be a right guard. So we'll see what happens there. But the running back certainly is one of the strengths of this team with Dupree, Jones, and Yakameli. Let's say, Justin, I think you were throwing around some numbers earlier, 350 maybe carries for this team potentially next year.
I think we're probably looking at closer to about somewhere between 360 and 375. Seems about right to me. But I said 2,400 yards. I thought was roughly what we're probably looking at running the football this next year with Grimes as an offensive coordinator. 200 yards a game.
So what's the carry dispersion there between those three? Who do you feel like gets the most carries from, let's say, okay, so 360 carries. We'll go with that number just for the sake of discussion. Where do you think those carries go between those three running backs?
Yeah, I think we were kind of talking about it in our group chat, and we said that we thought some combination of Jones and Dupree getting about 150 apiece and 60 to Yakimelli. I think that there's some leeway there. There's a chance that it jumps to like those guys each getting like 140 and maybe Yak gets 80. Like I think there's room for carries for everybody to stay fresh in this. And there's going to be situations where you get guys on the field where they don't have to necessarily be used as a running back. Like I think you're going to do some things with Dupree where you maybe motion him out of the backfield into the slot. Like he's a guy who's capable of being used and being very, very versatile. I think you could have plays where you're going to have multiple of these guys in the backfield. And I know for a fact Kansas ran some Wildcat last year. They had plays where they had their quarterback lineup as the running back and the running back lineup in Wildcat, and then would hand the ball off to the quarterback and do some cute things. So Grimes will do some interesting things with this group. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for him to be creative. I think we have a pretty good room there. The top three guys, I think, are capable of being a really productive running back room.
I agree. I think it's going to be one of the key strengths of our team. And I wonder if Yakimelli can get more. Like, can he find his way up into the number 2 role potentially? Or is it really going to be Dupree and Jones because they've almost been promised those positions so they would stay on this roster? But Yakimelli's been the most productive running back we've had for the 2 years. So, I mean, there really is no reason he's not there. And my thing with Yak is, if he's still in the room, I mean, we see him out there. He's practicing right now. If he's still here and he hasn't transferred, there has to be some kind of promise or real strong indication that he's going to be a significant part of this backfield. Otherwise, why would you stay? Like in this age of the portal, there's no reason for Yakimelli to stay here, unless because he can go to a MAC school and be the number 1 running back, clear as day, no problem with the numbers that he's produced. And the ability that he has to be in whether in space or out of the backfield as a pass catcher, like there's no reason for him to stay. So if he is going to stay, I think that there's clear indication that something's going to happen. I agree with you. I think Dupree and Jones split in essence. Dupree to me is still the number 1. I know there's been talk about whether Jones is going to be that guy and kind of be the bell cow, but I think Dupree is still that guy, especially with the way that Grimes runs his offense with those sort of zone runs. Dupree getting in space, the stretch kind of runs, I feel like he would be more beneficial in that situation. Short yardage things, that's probably more of a Dylan Jones. And then Yakimelli is kind of that Swiss Army knife that can do it all. So I agree. I think 150 and like 60 probably to Yakimelli. But he has got to have a big part of this offense. He has to be, right? There's no way that Luke Fickell can do this to him again and not give him legitimate carries.
What I will say is I legitimately believe when Grimes says he's going to use competition, he's going to play the best possible guys. To me, I don't think that that's lip service from a coach. It's not coach speak saying, oh, we're going to do this. I think he legitimately is just like, I'm coming in here to win football. And he's one of those guys that's kind of no nonsense in that regard. And is like, I'm not here to stroke egos. We're going to make sure we get the best players out there to be a functioning team. And I think that he's going to do whatever it takes to make his offense function the way he needs it to. And that will be, if you're going to leave because you're not seeing what you want, then so be it. But I'm going to win. I'm going to do what I need to do to win.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We will leave it there. Back again next week to talk more football, more basketball. Surely there will be more discussion about the season in general. Any final thoughts, Justin, on basketball, football, anything?
Well, I think we're going to have a dead week here because there's not going to be any football, but then we're going to get back to it for the spring football practice reports and everything. I believe that the remainder of practices are all going to be open, so we'll hear plenty of news coming out. I'm looking forward to hear how the transfer portal works for basketball. They really need to fill out this roster. There's going to probably be, as many as 3-4 spots probably. I'll be shocked if there's not that many. You need to add some depth in terms of upperclassmen to this roster because it's pretty young now.
Very. Lots to discuss on the future of this basketball program. But Chris Schwint, what up, guys? Glad I can make it. YouTube fails me on notifications. Hit that notification bell, hopefully, and that'll help you out in the future. Chris, Yeah, I mean, the thing I want to say to end the show is congratulations again to the women's hockey team. Fantastic. Look, we're never going to talk about the women's hockey team enough on this show. And they just won another national title. Go back and watch that game. It was fantastic. We were reacting to it live on this show. You put a comment up here you want to bring up.
Yeah, there was a request from Mr. October about the new personnel director from North Texas. They brought in Ethan. I gotta grab his last name here. See if I can find him real quick. It is Ethan Russo. So he apparently is extremely well thought of at North Texas. He was a guy who was at BYU or Utah for a little bit while they were putting together some of their really good recruiting classes. He seems to be a young guy who has kind of worked his way up very quickly. He seems to have a lot of the juice that we kind of had with Max. Obviously, I'm not compare them as a direct replacement because Max was obviously a star here. But I think you got a really, really good follow-up hire in Ethan. We'll see what happens from this. It's a guy who has some obviously Midwest and some Texas recruiting connections, I'm guessing. And he's a young guy. Like, you have somebody that's got a lot of energy, and I think that's what you need for a role like this. You need somebody who has the flexibility in life that they can just live and die football, every week. Put in that 60, 70 hours and just kill it. And I think that this is going to be an opportunity for them to get a guy in there who is – I don't know if there'll be drop-off or not, but I do think that this was a quality hire.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that we can get in that kind of position is going to be critical, and it's good that we added that to our arsenal a little bit. Which is
North Texas is not happy that he's gone. Let's just put it that way, and that should tell you all you need to know about how well thought of he is.
We're not happy about the guys that we lost.
Exactly.
So,
They're doing good work, and that's exactly
right.
what you're looking for. Somebody that has some chops.
That's right. Thanks for joining us as always. Sad to see the Wisconsin basketball program lose in the NCAA tournament, but that's okay. Congratulations again to the Wisconsin women's hockey program, national champions once again, as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.